There are moments in life when obstacles feel immovable, situations that refuse to change, patterns that seem to repeat endlessly, and limitations that appear fixed, no matter how much effort is applied. These mountains take many forms. They may not always be visible, but their weight is undeniable. They stand in the way of progress, clarity, and peace, creating the sense that something is resisting movement at every level. In response, effort increases. More words are spoken, more attempts are made, more strategies are tried. There is a belief that if enough energy is applied, if enough persistence is shown, eventually something will shift. And yet, despite all of this, many find themselves in the same place, pushing, striving, repeating, but not moving forward. This creates a deeper question. Why do some obstacles remain unmoved even after repeated effort? Why do some situations resist change despite consistent action? Why does it feel like something is missing, even when everything that seems necessary is being done? The answer is not always found in doing more. Sometimes it is found in understanding what has been overlooked. There is a principle, simple in nature, but powerful in effect, that has existed from the beginning. It has not changed. It has not weakened. It has not disappeared, and yet it is often missed because it does not rely on complexity. It does not demand excessive effort. It does not require endless repetition. It requires alignment. This is the forgotten apostolic secret, not forgotten because it was hidden, but forgotten because it was replaced by methods that emphasize effort over understanding, repetition over clarity, and striving over position. Over time, the simplicity of this truth became overshadowed by the belief that more action automatically produces more results. But movement does not respond to effort alone. It responds to alignment. Mountains are not moved by how much is said. They are moved by what is said from the right position. They do not respond to noise. They respond to authority. They do not shift because of repetition. They shift because of clarity that carries weight. This is where everything begins to change, because the problem is not always the mountain. It is often the approach. When effort is applied without alignment, it becomes exhausting. It creates movement without direction, action without result. It leads to frustration because it feels like progress should be happening, yet nothing is shifting. And over time, this can create doubt, not only in the process but in the possibility of change itself. But the moment alignment is introduced, everything begins to respond differently. Because alignment brings precision, it removes confusion. It replaces uncertainty with clarity. It shifts the focus away from trying harder and toward positioning correctly. And in that shift, effort becomes effective instead of exhausting. This is why the secret is so powerful. It simplifies what was made complicated. It restores what was misunderstood. It brings back clarity to what was clouded by unnecessary complexity. And most importantly, it reveals that the ability to move what feels immovable has never been lost. It has only been overlooked. Understanding this changes the entire perspective. Instead of seeing obstacles as permanent, they begin to be seen as responsive. Instead of viewing mountains as immovable, they begin to be understood as waiting for the right alignment. Instead of relying on constant effort, there is a shift toward intentional positioning. This does not remove the challenge, but it changes how the challenge is approached. And when the approach changes, the outcome begins to follow. Because the secret was never about doing more, it was always about aligning correctly. And once that aligning is understood, what once felt impossible begins to move. It is possible to invest time, energy, and consistency into something and still see little to no change. This is one of the most frustrating experiences. Putting in effort, repeating actions, staying committed, and yet feeling as though nothing is responding. Over time, this can lead to confusion, because the natural belief is simple: more effort should produce more results. But reality does not always follow that pattern, because effort alone does not guarantee effectiveness. There is a difference between activity and alignment. Activity creates movement, but alignment creates results. And when activity exists without alignment, it often leads to exhaustion instead of progress. This is where many become stuck, working harder, trying more, speaking more, yet not understanding why the outcome remains unchanged. The problem is not always a lack of effort. It is often a lack of direction within that effort. When actions are taken without clarity, they become scattered. Energy is applied, but it is not focused. Words are spoken, but they are not anchored in understanding. And because of that, the impact becomes weak, even if the effort is strong. This creates a cycle. More effort is applied in response to lack of results. More repetition follows. More attempts are made. But because the foundation has not changed, the outcome remains the same. And this leads to a deeper level of frustration, because it feels like everything is being done correctly, yet nothing is moving. Over time, this can begin to affect belief. Doubt starts to form. Not always, loudly, but gradually. It raises questions about whether change is even possible, whether the effort is worth continuing, whether the obstacle is simply too strong to be moved. And this doubt becomes another layer that reinforces the feeling of being stuck. But the issue is not the impossibility of movement. It is misalignment in approach. Misalignment is subtle. It is not always obvious. It can exist even when actions appear correct on the surface, but beneath those actions there may be uncertainty, lack of clarity, or inconsistency in position. And these factors weaken the overall impact, even if they are not immediately recognized. For example, repetition without understanding creates noise instead of direction. Words may be spoken repeatedly, but if they are not rooted in clarity, they do not carry the weight required to produce change. Effort without focus creates motion, but not movement in the right direction. This is why results often feel distant, not because they are unreachable, but because the approach is not aligned with what produces them. Alignment is what gives effort its power. It is what turns scattered action into focused direction. It is what transforms repetition. It is what transforms repetition into intentional declaration. It is what shifts effort from being exhausting to being effective. Without alignment, effort becomes a cycle. With alignment, effort becomes a tool. This distinction is critical because continuing to apply effort without addressing alignment only strengthens the cycle of frustration. It reinforces the belief that more is needed, when in reality what is needed is different, not more action, but more clarity. Not more repetition, but more understanding. Once this is recognized, something begins to change internally. The pressure to constantly do more begins to decrease. The need to prove effort through repetition begins to fade, and in its place, a new awareness begins to form. An awareness that results are not driven by volume, but by position. This awareness shifts focus completely. Instead of asking, what more can be done, the question becomes, what needs to be aligned? Instead of trying to increase effort, there is a move toward refining direction. Instead of pushing harder, there is a shift toward positioning correctly. And this is where effectiveness begins. Because when alignment is corrected, even small actions carry greater impact. Words become stronger, not because they are louder, but because they are clearer. Effort because they are clearer. Effort becomes lighter, not because it is reduced, but because it is directed. This is the turning point, the moment where frustration begins to fade, not because the challenge disappears, but because the approach finally begins to match what produces real movement. Because results are not the product of effort alone, they are the result of effort aligned with truth. At the core of real movement lies a principle that is often misunderstood, not because it is complex, but because it is too simple to be recognized without clarity. That principle is authority through alignment. It is the foundation upon which true effectiveness is built, and it is the very thing that separates effort from results. Authority is not force. It is not loudness, intensity, or repetition. It does not come from trying harder or pushing more. Authority comes from position. It is the awareness of alignment with what is already established. It is the clarity that removes hesitation, the certainty that eliminates doubt, and the understanding that gives weight to every word and action. Without alignment, authority cannot function, because authority is not something that is created. It is something that is recognized and stepped into. It is not developed through effort, but accessed through understanding. And when that understanding is missing, actions lose their effectiveness, no matter how consistent they may be. This is why many struggle, not because they lack effort, but because they are operating without clear alignment. Words may be spoken, and actions may be taken, but without the correct position, they do not carry the force required to produce change. It is like trying to direct something without being connected to the source that gives direction its power. Alignment changes this completely. Alignment is what connects action to outcome. It ensures that what is being done is not only active, but effective. It brings precision where there was once confusion. It removes unnecessary effort by focusing only on what produces results. And most importantly, it establishes a position from which authority can operate. When alignment is present, everything becomes simpler. There is no need to overcomplicate the process. There is no need to rely on constant repetition. There is no need to question whether something will work, because alignment creates clarity, and clarity removes uncertainty. This is where authority becomes visible, not through force, but through confidence, not through striving, but through steadiness, not through volume, but through precision. Words spoken from alignment carry weight because they are not driven by uncertainty. They are not influenced by doubt or confusion. They are grounded in understanding, and because of that, they do not need to be repeated endlessly to be effective. This is the difference between trying and commanding. Trying is uncertain. It is driven by hope without clarity. It repeats because it is unsure. It pushes because it is unsure. It pushes because it does not fully understand its position. And because of that, it often feels exhausting. Commanding, on the other hand, is clear. It does not struggle to be heard because it is rooted in alignment. It does not question itself because it is grounded in understanding. It does not need excessive repetition because its authority is already established. This does not mean that effort is removed. It means that effort becomes focused. It becomes intentional instead of scattered. It becomes effective instead of exhausting. It becomes aligned instead of misdirected. And this transformation is what makes the difference between stagnation and movement. Authority also changes expectation. Instead of hoping for results, there is confidence and alignment. Instead of waiting in uncertainty, there is steadiness in position. Instead of questioning whether something will shift, there is clarity that something has already been established. Even if it is not yet visible, this internal shift is powerful because it removes the emotional instability that often comes with misalignment. It replaces doubt with confidence, frustration with clarity, and confusion with direction. And as this stability grows, actions begin to reflect that same level of alignment. This is the apostolic secret, not a hidden formula, not a complicated system, but a clear principle. Authority flows from alignment, and once this is understood, everything begins to respond differently. Because what once required constant effort now responds to clear positioning. What once felt resistant begins to shift under aligned direction. What once seemed immovable begins to reveal that it was never permanent. It was simply waiting for the right authority to be applied, and that authority is only activated when alignment is fully understood and embraced. The moment alignment is truly understood and activated, a shift begins to take place, first internally, then externally. It is not always loud or dramatic at the beginning, but it is undeniable. Something changes in the way everything is approached, and that change begins to influence outcomes in ways that were not possible before. Before alignment, there is struggle. There is constant effort, repeated attempts, and a sense of pushing against resistance, without seeing clear movement. It feels like trying to force change through persistence alone. And while effort is present, effectiveness is limited because direction is unclear. But once alignment is activated, that entire pattern begins to dissolve. The first shift happens within. Clarity replaces confusion. The mind becomes more focused, more stable, more certain about what is being done and why. There is less questioning, less overthinking, less emotional fluctuation. Instead of reacting to circumstances, there is a sense of control rooted in understanding. This internal clarity is powerful because it sets the foundation for everything that follows. When the mind is aligned, actions naturally follow that alignment. Words become more precise. Decisions become more intentional. Effort becomes more focused. And because everything is now connected to clarity, it begins to carry weight. This is where effectiveness begins to show. Not because more is being done, but because what is being done is now aligned. Even small actions start to produce noticeable impact. What once felt heavy begins to feel lighter. What once seemed complicated begins to feel simple. And what once required constant repetition begins to respond to clear direction. This is the power of alignment. It reduces unnecessary effort while increasing effectiveness. It removes confusion while strengthening clarity. It replaces struggle with steady movement. And as this internal shift stabilizes, external changes begin to follow. Situations that once felt resistant begin to open. Obstacles that once seemed fixed begin to shift. Opportunities that were not visible before begin to appear, and these changes do not feel random. They feel connected, as if everything is responding to a new level of alignment, because it is. Alignment does not just change internal perspective, it influences external response. When position is correct, actions become effective. When actions are effective, outcomes begin to change. And when outcomes begin to change, it becomes clear that the issue was never the impossibility of movement, it was the absence of alignment. This realization is transformative, because it removes the belief that obstacles are permanent. It replaces it with the understanding that obstacles respond to alignment. It shifts the focus away from trying to break through resistance and toward positioning correctly so that resistance no longer holds the same power. This also creates a new level of confidence, not based on past failure or frustration, but based on present clarity. There is no longer a need to question whether something can move. The focus shifts to maintaining alignment, knowing that alignment itself is what produces movement. This confidence is steady, not emotional. It does not rise and fall with circumstances. It remains consistent because it is rooted in understanding, not in temporary results. And this stability allows continued progress without the interruptions that doubt once created. Over time, this becomes a new way of operating. Alignment is no longer something that must be consciously forced. It becomes natural. Decisions are made from clarity. Actions are taken with purpose. Words are spoken with precision, and everything begins to flow from a position that consistently produces results. This is where real transformation takes place, not just in outcomes, but in approach. Because once alignment is activated, nothing is approached the same way again. The struggle that once defined the process is replaced by direction. The confusion that once created frustration is replaced by clarity, and the effort that once felt exhausting is replaced by effectiveness. And in this new position, it becomes clear that movement was never impossible. It was simply waiting for alignment to be activated. Now the responsibility shifts from understanding to action. Everything that has been revealed means nothing if it remains only an idea. Awareness without application does not produce change. Clarity without movement does not shift outcomes. The secret only becomes powerful when it is practiced consistently and intentionally. This is the moment to step into it fully. No more relying on effort without direction. No more repeating patterns that lead to frustration. No more approaching challenges from a place of confusion or uncertainty. That cycle must end here. Make a clear decision. A decision to no longer operate from misalignment. A decision to stop measuring progress by effort alone. A decision to replace striving with positioning, repetition with clarity, and noise with authority. Because everything changes when position changes. Begin with awareness. Pay attention to how things are being approached. Notice where effort is being applied without direction. Recognize where repetition is being used to compensate for lack of clarity. These patterns must be identified before they can be corrected. Then, shift immediately. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not delay the adjustment. Alignment does not require time to begin. It requires a decision. The moment clarity is recognized, action must follow. And that action starts with changing how words are spoken, how decisions are made, and how challenges are approached. Speak with intention. Let every word carry meaning. Remove uncertainty from what is being expressed. Do not speak from doubt, confusion, or hesitation. Speak from clarity, even if that clarity is still being developed. Because the act of aligning words with understanding strengthens authority over time. Act with purpose. Do not move randomly. Do not act out of pressure or urgency. Every step must be connected to alignment. Every act on must reflect understanding. This reduces wasted effort and increases effectiveness immediately. Stay consistent. This is where many fail. Not in understanding, but in maintaining it. Alignment must become a habit, not a temporary adjustment. It must be practiced daily, applied in every situation, and reinforced until it becomes natural. There will be moments where old patterns try to return. Moments where it feels easier to go back to repetition, to increase effort without clarity, to push harder instead of positioning correctly. But those moments must be recognized and corrected immediately. Because returning to misalignment will only reproduce the same results. Discipline is required here. Not harsh discipline, but focused discipline. A commitment to remain aligned regardless of circumstances. A refusal to act without clarity. a decision to maintain authority even when results are not immediately visible. Because alignment is not proven in easy moments. It is proven in moments of resistance. When nothing seems to move, alignment must remain. When outcomes are delayed, alignment must continue. When challenges appear stronger, alignment must not be abandoned. This is what separates temporary understanding from lasting transformation, and over time the results will begin to confirm the shift. Not always instantly, but consistently, movement will begin to appear where there was once resistance, clarity will continue to increase where there was once confusion, and effectiveness will replace exhaustion completely. This is the evidence of alignment in action. But do not wait for results to remain committed. Remain aligned because it is the correct position, not because results have already appeared. Because once alignment is fully established, results are no longer a question. They become a natural outcome. So step into the secret fully. Do not hold back. Do not hesitate. Do not return to what has already proven ineffective. Call to action. From this moment forward, commit to alignment in everything. Speak with authority, act with clarity, and remain consistent until every mountain that once stood before you begins to move.